There are many topics that will literally make individuals cringe, shudder, and downright turn away from the instance. Racism is one of them, or the belief that all members of each race possess characteristics or abilities specific to that race, especially so as to distinguish it as inferior or superior to another race or races. Then there are politics, or the activities associated with the governance of a country or other area, especially the debate or conflict among individuals or parties having or hoping to achieve power. And please let us not forget about religion, or the cultural system of behaviors and practices, mythologies, worldviews, sacred texts, holy places, ethics, and societal organizations that relate humanity to what in anthropology has called an order of existence. Indeed, these are hot topics that many avoid because they have been known to stir great debates, divide many people, cultures, and nations, and literally is the cause of many conflicts, destruction, wars, and even death. However, I have not even touched on the hottest topic, the greatest debate, the quietest taboo, a subject matter that not only have victims wearing a mask to disguise their deepest wounds, but a shield that they use to try and protect themselves from ever being wounded again. A subject matter that have people afraid of the dark, afraid of man, afraid to be alone, afraid of loved ones, afraid of living, just afraid, as they live in a constant state of fear. This subject matter that leaves many of us numb, discombobulated, emotionally wrecked, paranoid, and just flat out conflicted. Is rape, sexual assault, sexual abuse, molestation. This is one hot topic that nobody wants to talk about. Well, I come to tell you, don't have any worries today, because that's exactly why I'm here. I'm going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it. I'm not going to cringe, I'm not going to shudder, I'm not going to back down, and I'm going to stand right here before you and talk about sexual assault or any type of forced or coerced sexual contact or behavior that happens without consent. So sexual assault, rape, attempted rape, child molestation, sexual harassment or threats, let's talk about it. Let's deal with it. Let's raise awareness. Let's begin to release so that we can begin to all heal. I am your speaker, Lavinia. I am a survivor of sexual assault. At the age of 13, I was violently raped by a perpetrator that decided he wanted to choose my home to come in one night and take what did not belong to him at night point. For over 20 years, I lived in fear. I lived in confusion. All of these things that sexual assault and sexual trauma brings turned into bitterness, hatred. I can't even describe the poison that sexual assault and sexual abuse brings to a child, or any individual for that matter. But this is what happened to me at 13 years old, not including the childhood sexual abuse. That doesn't even matter, because when somebody comes and decides that they want something and they're going to take it by force violently, use a weapon, don't care if family's in the home, anybody else is in the home, it kind of wiped everything else out of my memory bank. But moving forward with my sexual assault, or with the sexual assault that happened to me as a child, my family was, I not only was devastated and affected by this trauma, my family was devastated and affected by this trauma. And because our perpetrator came in unknowingly and left the house unknowingly, we went over 20 years not knowing who this was and did this to me. So you can imagine a child that was once an A student in tag, I don't know if they call it that, but it was talented and gifted back in the day, happy-go-lucky, just enjoying life, returning from the summer, a summer of pain, a summer of hell, a summer of just feeling ridiculed, returning back to school. You can only imagine how I felt, how people looked at me, because this was not the same child. My grades began to fail. I began to have an attitude. I told my counselor when they approached me, you know, what happened, what's going on with you? I told them that I hated people. I hated people because I thought for somebody to be so evil, to allow something to dwell within them, to want to do to a child, something is wrong with our society. So why should I have any love for people? This is how I felt as a victim of sexual abuse, sexual assault. This is how many victims feel today. Having this pain, this untouched hurt that nobody reaches out to them and try to find some sort of release, some sort of healing for them, some sort of closure for them. This is what I went through. But thank God for DNA. Thank God for my faith, because over 21 years later, the Dallas Police Department started an initiative called the CCAP program, which is a sexual assault cold case program. And in this program, your case had to be done within the 70s or the early 80s, and it had to be an unknown perpetrator, and you had to do a rape kit, or a SANE exam, as we call them now. I did the exam, and my kit, of course, sat on the shelf for over 20 years. Thank God they didn't trash it, they didn't burn it, they didn't let it get contaminated, the evidence get contaminated, but it sat there on that shelf for over 20 years. And with the new technology of CODIS and the DNA that they have in process now, they were able to locate my perpetrator, find my kit, and bring closure to my life. I'm very thankful for that, and it further empowered me as an advocate to come and to go and share hope and peace and love to other survivors and other victims, because it lets me know that there is hope in man. Every man is not bad. Every person is not out to do us bad, do us harm, as I so thought as a child. The memories I had as a child were not the best memories to have, as you can imagine. But when my case was solved, and Sergeant Welsh, he's now retired, came into my house and showed me my perpetrator, his MO. He's done this before, carjacked women and raped them at knife point. He broke into elderly women's homes at knife point and raped them. But the unfortunate part was, after my assault, because at the time there was a statute of limitations, I could not prosecute. I could not go after my perpetrator now that I know who he was, because it was over 20 years later. But since then, we've created laws that my DNA evidence and any other perpetrator in the state of Texas, so if you know anyone that's been violated years ago and you figure, what the hey, why would I even open up this can of worms? There is a law in place where if that person perpetrates or violates somebody else or any other crime, that judge in his discretion can use that DNA evidence that's now on their DPS records. But getting back to my writing, because I don't want to hold you long, you've been here long enough. The memories that I had were permanent. They were visions of my past experiences that lie motion in your mind until they are re-triggered by certain circumstances or present happenings within our lives, where they begin to replay over and over again. Some of these memories brought so much joy and pleasure that you are amazed at how easily you can dismiss them until they are brought back to your remembrance. While on the other hand, some memories are so devastating and painful, you can only pray that you had the power to erase them permanently. Then there are those memories that are so detached from you that when they're brought up again, you find yourself questioning your own sanity. And this is what I had begun to do. And you try to gather all the pieces together in your life. And you dig and you try to no avail. However, you later discover that somewhere during that time, something traumatic has happened in your life. something that will eventually cause a drastic change within you. Doctors and therapists have their medical reasons as to why these memories are so suppressed, but I always like to think it's God's way of protecting you. Although my damage is permanent, any of my damage is permanent, only some of it was a total loss, because some can be repaired. So is the life of a survivor. Sexual abuse or sexual assault, the damage that has been caused cannot be reversed, unfortunately, but left untreated and unaddressed, or even before the victim's demise, is a total loss, because that victim never had the opportunity to live as a survivor, the opportunity to know that there is hope after sexual trauma. They continue to live their lives as victims and possibly even soulless and unhealthy and immoral lifestyles. However, if a victim is given the chance of counseling or therapy after such traumatic experiences, then not only is this victim now on the road to recovery, but now find themselves on the way to be repaired. The damage now becomes structural and is no longer internal. I have a story, it's kind of long that I wrote here. I'm trying to remember it about 3 hours. But I vaguely remember when I was a little girl, I was burned over all of my body in a tub of hot water. One of my cousins was babysitting me. And that was a very traumatic experience for me, because the part I remember is as I sat in that hot water, I guess I went into shock. And what made me come out of shock was my skin literally began to boil, and it started floating on top of the water, and that's when I began to scream. And I remember for months I had to live in the hospital, and my family couldn't even touch me. I was like a bubble child trying to feed me in certain foods I couldn't eat. But if you look at me now, you can't tell all of the damage that I've been through, all of the pain that I've been through, the scarring that I've been through as a burn victim, and so is such as a victim of sexual assault. And that's why it's so important that victims, although it's a subject we don't like to talk about, we don't want to talk about this. You know, this is something we remain quiet about when we talk about sexual abuse. We hate that some of our own fathers, some of our own uncles, some of our own grandfathers, some of our cousins, our brothers, our family members, they violated us. Strangers violated us. That's true. It happened. I'm sorry it happened. And you must understand, it was not your fault. You had absolutely no control over the things that happened to you, that transpired in your lifetime. We cannot control the evil that dwells in man. We can't control the things that they conceive in their minds and they act them out upon you. We can't do that, but we can be here to help in the healing process. And that's why I stand here as an advocate, as a survivor. And that's why I don't mind sharing my story. I like to say that it's like an oil in my alabaster box that I don't mind pouring out to the world. It used to be bitter to me. Now it's sweet, because I pray that I can help somebody someday, and somebody will look at me and see the empowerment and see what God has done in my life and see the healing process, and know that you guys have counselors here at your colleges, and you have therapists and centers and hospitals and facilities that are here to help you and help bring you closer and bring you through this. You don't have to continue to live in the rut that you're in. Maybe none of you have been touched by it directly, but I can guarantee you many of you have been touched by sexual abuse or some form indirectly. If it's not you, it's your mother or your cousin or your sister or your niece, somebody you know, or your best friend, somebody. I know in colleges it's happening. Somebody has confided in you that they, without consent, somebody violated me. And they carry this guilt that it was my fault. I did it. I must have some kind of way enticed him. I did the same thing. I wrestled. I was asleep in my house. But I thought maybe I shouldn't have slept in my shorts that night. Maybe if I would have did this. Maybe if I would have kneed him. Maybe if there was nothing, absolutely nothing I could have done to prevent the events that transpired that night on July 31st, 1985. But there is everything that I can do and that you can do to try to help prevent others from staying on the wayside and speaking out to stop these things from happening now. Sexual assault did these things to me, but releasing, healing, and raising awareness were keys to my resurrection. Sexual assault has a way of robbing you of life, because that is what it did to me on that night. And that is what it does to you and your loved ones and your friends when they are violated by a perpetrator. Yet today, every one of you hold a key to my resurrection. Today, all of you have the power to grant life after death. How, you ask? First, by continuing to speak up and out about sexual abuse and sexual assault. Continue to support the efforts of Stop the Hurt and Hang the Shirt and various organizations such as Centro, the police department, and Sigma Alpha Lambda, as they fight against sexual assault and sexual violence. Let me tell you firsthand that the effects of sexual trauma is much more than traumatic. I can promise you that. And for this cause, many victims remain victims, and some even turn to undesirable and destructive lifestyles, such as drugs, alcohol, prostitution, promiscuity, unhealthy relationships, and immoral living. So today, you not only have the power to help resurrect victims after sexual assault and sexual trauma, but you also have the power to prevent it. Today, I stand before you no longer a victim, but as a conqueror and a survivor. I survived because of people like you that stand up, speak up, and prevent sexual assault. I survived because organizations like yours support laws that punish sexual predators and hold them accountable for their actions. I survived because the Dallas Police Department did not give up on finding my perpetrator over 20-something years later, and was able to locate and identify my rapist, Kevin Glenn Turner. Yeah, that's his name. I ain't shamed no more. Shame on him. Shame on him for breaking in the window of a child and taking something that didn't belong to him and doing it violently. So no, I'm not ashamed. His name is Kevin Glenn Turner. If you want to look him up, look him up. He's still in prison, as a matter of fact. They protest his parole ever since they found out about my case. I'm like, go, okay. So I survived because I had a moment. I survived because I realized by the grace of God that life is worth living, and that now I have to fight as an advocate and to help others to survive. Sexual assault had me living and dwelling among the walking dead, but the power of people like you have resurrected me to survive and to fight for others. Thank you for your time.